guys, hope I'm here. We'll be doing a good to directions to Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, Operation Turnabout, Episode 4 by Lord of Van. So, this one's like an hour long, so I'm going to have to cut this one in half. I would do a full hour, but I don't know if anyone's going to interrupt me within an hour, because most people kind of do, so that's why I had to cut these in half. So, let's get to it. A 3, a 2, and 1. Let's see if we can stall the court.
Just a few more minutes until today's proceedings begin.
So we can get more info.
Be interesting.
Interesting. I hope you don't mean we're in for another courtroom roller coaster.
How about you reveal all the secrets you have, dude? This is your freaking life.
No need to panic. I'd even dare say we have the upper hand. For once.
Oh? How so?
The burden of proof lies on the prosecution today. It's up to Miss Von Karma to present hard evidence to rule out possible suicide. You cannot be found guilty if she's unable to establish that a crime has taken place.
And what if she does?
Then at least we'll have tangible statements and evidence to debate.
That's good. Did you find out anything new yesterday?
This will be challenging.
Bits and pieces. Nothing groundbreaking, but useful stuff nonetheless.
Things like the...
Like I said, all they have to do is just try to stall the court until they can give another day. If they can do that, then maybe they can get the info.
Now that's a promising sign. If you managed to reason with him, convincing the judge should be child's play.
Oh, it wasn't all that hard. Just... loud.
Ha, that's Tennant for you.
I wonder if he's going to show up with anything. There's not much time before the trial begins.
I wonder how many trial days they're allowed to have.
Good morning. I'm glad I found you all.
Lieutenant Victoria.
Hang in there, Mike. You'll be free before you know it. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And you two are smooching it out, because I really think those two are a couple.
I couldn't
Just a
help
secret
overhearing
couple.
you just now. And I'm afraid that Staff Sergeant Tennant is unable to speak with you before the trial, on the grounds of being a witness for the prosecution.
Oh, he didn't mention anything like that when we talked to him earlier.
It would seem that Lady Von Karma saw fit to have him join me at the precinct soon after you talked to him.
Since you're here, I take it you're not a witness today, Miss Victoria?
No, I am merely here to observe.
Like last
I
time?
did not come here only to bid you good luck. Mr. Wright, could I have a quick word with you in private?
Sure.
Don't take too long now, Nick. Otherwise I'll have to tell Pearlie.
I promise this won't take long. Right, so what is it that you wanted to talk about?
I'm going to be frank with you, Mr. Wright. I took the liberty of looking into the background of our good prosecutor. It turns out that the name Von Karma bears a certain infamy in the world of law. A legacy of decades of perfect courtroom victory suddenly undone and replaced with accusations of forgery, fraud, and murder.
You are referring to Franziska's father? Why are you bringing this up?
I know of the exploits of Manfred Von Karma. What I am saying is that the apple often doesn't fall far from the tree. I
so
suspect
she's
that Lady
blackmailing you or
Von Karma
something?
might be withholding evidence.
What? But that's a severe crime!
Her father didn't seem to mind. How do you know we can trust her to play fair? From what I've seen, she is just as adamant to convict for the sake of a guilty verdict as her father was.
She must be good at hiding that stuff, or she would get fired.
I should know. I faced both of them in court.
Very well. Just be careful and watch your back in there.
I understand you're worried about Mike, but this is a little much. What makes you doubt her like this?
Just a gut feeling. That is all I wanted to say. Good luck in there.
Well, she did
Mr.
kind
Wright.
of say, because her father's kind of an a-hole,
when
so
is the
she's
wedding
probably an
held,
a-hole too.
Nick?
So,
Come on, Maya, give me a break.
You okay, Nick?
Is there a problem, Mr. Wright?
not really.
There's no problem. Miss Victoria was just worried about you. Maybe she's just being overprotective. Still, her accusation isn't something to casually throw around.
The trial is about to begin. Will the defense and the defendant take their places?
Well, this
It's
ought
not
to be good.
important now. Murder or suicide? That's the question we
I've
should
been
be
in court
focusing on
once.
fully today.
Boring as hell.
Face
I'm not allowed to talk about it
She
because
has
that's
in
the
store
law.
for us.
I mean, I wasn't in court. I was just in the jury.
Hey, how about this trial, huh? And all its details. Let's discuss them.
He said not to!
Oh, hey, you know how the judge told us not to make up our minds beforehand? Let's make up our minds.
Shut up!
Hey, I know the judge said not to run in the hall, but check this out.
Knock it off!
Court is now back in session for the trial of Mike Newville.
It's Santa Claus.
Like yesterday, the courtroom's doors will be locked until the end of today's proceedings. Are the prosecution and the defense ready?
The defense is ready, Your Honor.
No one has taken that whip from her yet. Really?
Yes, from the prosecution.
Indeed. Before we begin, I would like to inform the court that the police...
I mean, you're not allowed to bring any type of weapon into a courtroom. I don't care if that's supposed to be her personality. She shouldn't have it.
If they find anything crucial. There. You've been informed.
Very well. Now then, yesterday the defense brought up the possibility that the victim may have committed suicide. I asked you to look into this possibility. Ms. Von Karma, what is the prosecution's view on this matter, now that you have further examined the case?
As far as the prosecution is concerned, nothing has changed. The death of Captain Janus Harvey was a murder, and the only one who could have committed the crime is Private Mike November.
But there was a problem with time, wasn't there? An unexplainable gap between the defendant meeting the victim and the alarms going off?
Not anymore, Your Honor. Yesterday, the little episode here in the courtroom made me lose my composure, and I was cheated of my victory. However, today will be a different story. Today, the prosecution will perfectly disprove the possibility of a suicide and expose Private Mike November for what he is.
Alright.
Silly me dreaming of having the upper hand today.
Mr. Phoenix Wright, I ask you, was the victim's proposed suicide spontaneous? Or was he planning to kill himself from the very beginning?
Does it matter? Gah!
Of course it does, you fool! Unlike you,
Seriously, someone take that goddamn whip from her.
unnecessary questions. If we are to go by the defense's theory, then spontaneous suicide is not only unlikely, but nothing short of impossible. On Sunday, the day before the murder, security personnel from the regiment oversaw the packing of Captain Harvey's belongings to ensure no regiment property would accidentally be transferred with him. No hazardous materials of any kind were found during the search. The prosecution would like to
Could
submit
she be
the
lying?
rest of the packed items to the court.
Very well. The court accepts it into evidence.
We know that on the day of the murder, the victim went straight to his office and didn't leave once. This means that if Captain Janus Harvey was going to kill himself with an explosive, he would have had to bring the bomb with him into the Iron Chamber on Absolution Day. In other words, if this was a suicide, it had to have been planned beforehand. However, those who visited Captain Janus Harvey didn't report seeing anything suspicious in his office.
Alright.
The obvious alternative answer to the time discrepancy question is that Private Mike November's explosive was a more elaborate one. A fuse bomb would go off all too quickly, and remote detonation would be impossible since radio waves cannot penetrate the bunker's walls. Therefore, it makes sense that the bomb was rigged with a 20-minute timer. The explosive would then go off at 12:35, causing the alarm. Additionally, during interrogation, Private Mike November told the police that he was not aware of the bunker's auxiliary generators. Therefore, he must have thought that by pulling the kill switch, the victim would be sealed in the iron chamber with the explosive indefinitely. Perhaps his intention was to torture the victim by giving him 20 minutes to panic over the fact he was going to die.
Wouldn't he know how to...
First of all, that is baseless speculation. Second, Captain Harvey was a demolitions expert.
Yeah.
You would think he'd make an attempt to disarm the explosive.
Disarming a foreign type of explosive in impenetrable darkness without any tools? I doubt
He probably had a flashlight. Everyone has flashlights.
One would think he would have at least gotten up from his chair or tried calling for help.
Calling for help was out of the question, since the corded phone in the victim's office is powered by the bunker's generators. The kill
That's kind
switch
of a
literally isolated
stupid
him
decision, don't you
to his
think,
tiny
on the military's
fridge.
part?
Maybe so, but only for 10 minutes. The auxiliary generators would kick in halfway to the bomb's countdown. All the victim had to do was walk out and he'd be safe.
That is, if he could walk out. The prosecution would like to submit to the court an updated version of the victim's autopsy report with some fascinating new information. Namely, that the victim was knocked out before he died.
Huh?
What?
I ordered a more in-depth examination of the victim's body to confirm my theory. Lo and behold, the forensics team found signs that before he died, the victim's neck was struck with enough force to knock him out. Captain Janus Harvey was rendered unconscious by a blow from Private Mike November, and he didn't steer from it before it was too late. The defendant himself has testified that he had a fight with the victim in the iron chamber, and the keycard logs prove that Private Mike November was the last person to enter. Therefore, being the person who knocked the victim out, this makes the theory of Captain Janus Harvey committing suicide insufferable. Unless the defense would like to suggest
Well,
that
something
the victim
fell
shot
on
himself
him.
in the
I mean,
neck
that would
as
make more
part of
sense.
his suicide.
Why, that is an excellently solid argument from the prosecution. Mr. Wright, how do you respond?
I would like a moment to gather my thoughts.
Come on, Nick! You're good at making out crazy theories. We need one quick!
Usually I have more or less evidence
This is
to back
kind
them
of
up.
hard.
Now we're really up the creek without a paddle, and we're sinking fast. I've gotta think of something. Let's check the court record.
What are you planning to do?
I'm going to discredit her theory by attacking its weak point.
For massive damage?
To its credibility, yes. Objection! Miss Von Karma, your theory is based off the assumption that my client was able to build a timed explosive. But when we look at the contents of his personal locker, we see that there are no timers. Therefore, the notion that he could have built a time bomb
Is very possible. He could have simply used his last timer to rig the explosive. There's no reason to suspect he didn't have any timers in that workshop of his.
It's not very effective, Nick.
What a pitiful, petty creature you are, Mr. Phoenix Wright.
And you're a big, fat,
But even if
stupid...
we assume that my client knocked the victim out, that doesn't mean he planted the explosive. If the bomb was timed, it could have been set by anyone who went to see Captain Harvey on the day of the murder, or even someone from the regiment's security forces.
Fool, you are once again forgetting that Private Mike November was the only visitor with enough expertise to craft such a thing. Furthermore, even if one of Harvey's visitors, or Harvey himself, had managed to acquire a time explosive, the amount of explosive material required for a lethal pressure blast is not easily conceivable. A bomb of this size would have been noticed by either the victim or anyone entering the crime scene after it had been planted, since there aren't many places to hide it in such a small and desolate office. Which brings us to our witnesses, the two people who visited the victim before lunchtime. They will testify about their meeting and whether they noticed anything out of place.
In that case, you may call your first witness, Miss Von Karma.
The prosecution calls Dr. Jason Siegfried, the first visitor, to the stand.
We're ready then?
Witness, state your name and occupation.
Jason Siegfried. I'm a medical doctor at the Angeles Bay Peacekeeping Regiment.
According to the keycard usage logs, you visited the victim on the day of the murder.
Correct. I was the first one to see him.
Please testify to the court about this meeting, Doctor.
Oh, it would be my pleasure.
Keep your eyes peeled, Nick. We might learn something interesting.
Don't you mean your
Just what
ears?
the doctor
He doesn't
wanted
really
for
need
our
to
case.
see, he just needs to listen.
I went to see Harvey in the Iron Chamber and arrived at almost 10 o'clock sharp. I thought I'd
Does
see the
everybody
man
check the
smile once
time?
in my life, but I was wrong to expect that. We had a lot to talk about, but we did succeed in covering the most important things. I didn't notice anything out of place when I was there. Once my time was up and I was leaving, I bumped to Sergeant Tennant in the hallway.
So there was nothing unusual about your meeting?
Nope, it was all standard procedure.
It never hurts to have a second opinion on the testimony, though.
All right, Maya. Let's get ready to press the right spot and pull out all the extra information we can.
Sounds like a plan, Dr. Nick.
Mr. Wright, if you're done playing doctor, you can return to your actual profession and begin your cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor.
What? What is he doing now? Doctor-related? Seriously.
I went to see Harvey in the Iron Chamber and arrived at almost 10 o'clock sharp.
Hold it! And you went there alone?
Naturally. The meetings were supposed to be one-on-one, and all those who were interested in seeing Harvey had been promised a chance to do just that later in the day. There was no reason for anyone to tag along.
And when you got there, Captain Harvey was already in his office?
Correct.
Did you notice anything odd about him?
To be honest, I thought I'd see the man smile for once in my life, but I was wrong to expect that.
Hold it! You expected Harvey to be happy? Why?
He's getting a promotion.
Going to get promoted to Major and transferred to the
Yeah.
Allied Nations HQ. Quite the jump in one's career, one might say. But to be honest, I thought he'd be even more happy to leave the regiment behind and not have to deal with privates anymore.
But he wasn't excited, was he?
Oh, he could barely sit still in his chair, but it seemed to be more out of uneasy anxiousness, like there was something terrible looming over him. Not really sure what was up with him, though.
Interesting. How did your meeting go, then?
We had a lot to talk about, but we did succeed in covering the most important things.
Hold it! Could you please tell us what you discussed?
We talked about the future.
The future?
You mean flying cars and space?
No one will ever have a flying car. You can't trust people.
We talked about the future of Harvey and the regiment, and the future of his health.
Could you elaborate on that?
Well, seeing as I have received the court order to testify, Your Honor, with your permission, I would like to amend my testimony with more details about Harvey's health.
Permission granted. Go right ahead, witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Captain Harvey suffered from a heart condition, chronic tachycardia. He had to take medication for it daily.
Hold it! Could you describe the condition? In layman's terms, please.
It simply means that his heart rate was dangerously above normal, even while resting. It might not sound so bad, but
maybe
it
he
was a
shouldn't be
severe
drinking
condition,
alcohol when he's
and
having
you're
heart
supposed to
problems.
always have your medication on hand. We discussed how to best arrange his medical care after his transferal.
A bottle of heart medicine was indeed recovered from Captain Harvey's body, and confirmed to be exactly that.
Ah, yes, that's the new medication I brought him on Absolution Day. We had been talking about switching to an alternative that would better suit his needs. He was supposed to take one pill a day after lunch, much like his previous medication.
Did you discuss anything else apart from medical issues? Did he have any regrets?
Why should we mourn that which can't be changed when we can be the sculptors of what is yet to come?
Wise
What?
words. I see the witness has a bit of a poet in him. But the important question is, did you see anything suspicious in the Iron Chamber?
I didn't notice anything out of place when I was there.
Hold it! Nothing? Nothing at all?
Well, the room was extraordinarily empty. I think I can still name everything that was there. Harvey's bottle of spirits, some drinking glasses, a statue, his lunch plate, and everything that's bolted to the desk. Nothing else comes to mind. The security sure did a fine job packing Harvey's things in all those boxes, albeit I believe most of them were for Harvey's ego. We certainly didn't want any of it to stay here in the regiment.
That didn't feel very helpful.
As you have just heard, the witness saw nothing out of the ordinary.
Which means there was no
This
bomb.
is what we wanted to hear.
That's what you wanted to hear.
Any last statements, witness?
Once my time was up and I was leaving, I bumped to Sergeant Tennant in the hallway.
Hold it! Was Sergeant Tennant carrying anything with him? Something resembling a bomb, perhaps?
No. His hands were free, and it was just the two of us in the hallway. He did give me a mouthful for taking whole 60 seconds of his precious time, though. After apologizing for my nefarious crime, I made my way back to the hospital, where I stayed until lunch. That's all I've got for you.
Did you spot any contradictions, Nick?
Not really.
I have this nagging feeling, but we've only heard half of the intended testimony so far. We'll figure out something.
Really makes you think.
The court has heard the first witness's testimony. The next witness will corroborate it and testify about his own actions. The prosecution calls to the stand Staff Sergeant Lewis Tennant, the second of the victim's visitors.
See if he's gonna yell the whole darn time.
Witness, state your...
You there in the blue suit with your pathetic little badge.
Me? Oh boy.
You asked if the doc saw me carrying a bomb around. Were you about to call me an assassin?
Sir, no sir.
You make me sick. And wipe that disgusting grin off your face.
Witness!
Ha! Was that supposed to hurt? You whip like a lady. Ooh, that's better.
Name, occupation,
Seriously, someone keep that
testimony.
whip away from her.
Ma'am, yes ma'am. The name's Lieutenant. I'm a staff sergeant.
Oh, I was under the impression you were a lieutenant.
Listen, bud, living with a name like mine ain't easy. Don't make it any worse.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. I mean, I can relate. Sometimes I fear my brother isn't being taken seriously, well, because his name is...
Your Honor, you are not the one testifying here.
My apologies. Please proceed with your testimony, witness.
I was training all morning from 6 to almost 1100 hours, but made it to the Iron Chamber right on time. I entered the Dragon's Den and attacked with full force. I was so sick of that man and his face. We fought with all we got. Well, before my time ran out anyway. Unfortunately, I had to retreat from the field of battle to the DFAC, and picked up some reinforcements along the way.
Oh my. That sounds like a much more, eventful meeting.
No kidding! Their clash sounds like something out of Steel Samurai!
You take that back, Missy! Steel Samurai is for little kids and people with no taste. That pales in comparison to our manliest of battles.
What? Nick, object to that now! That's a clear contradiction of the facts!
Let's just stick to looking for them in real testimonies, okay?
A wise choice, Mr. Wright. You may proceed with your cross-examination.
I was training all morning from 6 to almost 1100 hours, but made it to the Iron Chamber right on time.
Hold it! What were you training for?
What's there not to train for? A good drill officer stays in top shape and ready for anything. Besides, I had to make up for missing a day at camp. Someone has to be the one doing push-ups.
I
can barely do 5.
Did you notice anything strange on your way to see Captain Harvey?
Negative. Except that the damn doc was taking his sweet time. My time, actually.
But he was only a minute overtime, wasn't he?
60 seconds! Can you imagine what one could do in 60 seconds? Time is a valuable resource not to be wasted. Give me a base, 5 good men, and $1,000, and I'll have you a proper unit by the end of the day.
That sounds scary efficient.
And unpleasant. And here I
Most
thought
people spend
my
all those times playing video games.
Anyway, here's where it gets good. I entered the Dragon's Den and attacked with full force.
Hold it! You attacked Captain Harvey?
Oh yeah, I let him have it. I've been waiting for so long. My buddy was Reggie.
Staff Sergeant Tennant, are you confessing to an assault?
Hell no, I didn't lay a finger on the man. I just gave him my honest feedback by screaming until my face was 12 shades of blue.
Why would you do something like that?
Why? I was so sick of that man and his face.
Hold it! So, you screamed at him?
You got a problem, son? It was Absolution Day, and the regiment code states that he could not punish me for whatever I had to say. And you can bet your ass I had a lot of things I wanted to say. Harvey was a self-centered slave driver, and seeing that goddamn bust on his desk was just too much.
A bust?
Yeah, the man had a bust of himself. Can you believe it? One Harvey is more than enough.
Didn't Dr. Siegfried mention a statue as well?
We fought with all we got. Well, before my time ran out anyway.
Hold it! So, you spent an entire hour just shouting at him?
I was just getting warmed up when Harvey told me that my time was up.
Did Captain Harvey actually do anything during your fight?
Well, not really. The man just sat there and gave me the Harvey stare. The only thing he told me was to get out when my time was up. But I could see that he was boiling inside, so it felt like an S-rank victory to me. I even saw the man pop open his precious bottle of spirits before I left, so I must have left quite an impact.
An hour of being yelled to the face by this man? I would never forget that. Possibly never recover.
Not much of an epic duel, though. Steel Samurai definitely wins this time. Then again, the samurai always wins.
One last question while you were, fighting. Did you notice anything peculiar in the office?
I concentrated on the target, not the battlefield. But I'm pretty sure I would have noticed anything grossly out of place.
Naturally. You cannot see that which doesn't exist. And then what happened?
Unfortunately, I had to retreat from the field of battle to the DFAC, and picked up some reinforcements along the way.
Hold it! Reinforcements?
Yeah, Demo Gal had asked me to go pick her up for lunch so we could all dine together.
By Demo Gal, you're referring to Lieutenant Victoria, right?
Who else? After my glorious battle, I marched victoriously into the instructor offices and had her join me on my way to the mess hall where the doc was waiting.
Security camera feed from Lieutenant Irene Victoria's office confirms that the witness came to retrieve her for lunch, not long after his scheduled time was up.
Alright.
We've now heard from both witnesses, and the conclusion that can be drawn from their testimonies is that there was nothing suspicious at the scene of the crime.
It would certainly seem that way. Mr. Wright, your thoughts?
Nick, don't say you're out of ideas!
Far from
I sure am.
It is true that the witnesses' stories match up well. However, they both have testified to a glaring contradiction.
No? Please explain, Mr. Wright.
Take a look at this photo of the crime scene. Both witnesses claim to have seen a statue or a bust in the iron chamber.
Oh,
but
it must have been
no
used to
such
knock them
thing could
out.
be seen here.
That is very true.
I find it appalling that the prosecution would overlook such a thing.
Objection! Be careful with your accusations, Mr. Phoenix Wright. The prosecution knows exactly where the bust is. It's right there in the picture. All over it, in fact. The white dust you see in this picture has been analyzed by forensic experts and has been determined to be plaster, a material commonly used to make busts. Obviously, the plaster bust was destroyed in the pressure blast and turned into fine dust.
Crap. Ah!
Your tricks can only take you so far, so give up while you still have a face left to save, Mr. Phoenix Wright.
At this point, I'm
How could
afraid
blast
you might
turn
need
a bust
literally-
into dust?
Come on,
It should have been
Nick.
pieces.
I know you can do this!
The fate of the bust has been cleared, and it is time to move on to more pressing matters.
Objection! I disagree. This bust is very relevant to my interests.
What is with you men and your fascination with bust? They're
I don't
nothing
give
but
two craps about
decoration.
busts.
And that's exactly what I have a problem with. There are no decorative items mentioned on the inventory list. So where did this bust of Harvey come from?
That's irrelevant.
It is very relevant.
Yeah, it could have been
This
used
is
to knock them out.
exactly the kind of suspicious object we've been looking for. The inventory list was created the day before the murder. And since this bust doesn't appear on it, it can only mean somebody brought the bust to the office on the day of the murder. And since both Dr. Siegfried and Sergeant Tennant claim to have seen the statue, it is very likely that Captain Harvey brought the bust to the Iron Chamber himself.
The fact that the victim may have wanted to show off his narcissism is irrelevant.
Or there might be more to this bust than meets the eye.
The pieces are all starting to fall into place.
Oh, I seem to recall something like this. Let me guess. The bust is actually a clock, isn't it?
What sort of nonsense is this? A bust is a bust!
You can hide
You're
stuff in
partially
busts.
correct, Your Honor. There was a clock of sorts in the bust. Only this is the kind of clock that counts backwards.
What sort of delirious fever dream is this? Are you really going to claim that there was a bomb inside the bus? Why, I ask? Would someone planning to kill themselves go through so much trouble preparing and not even leave a suicide note? It makes no sense. I hate to sound insensitive, but the victim had
Maybe that
easy
one
ways
thing
of
that
ending his life.
Gumshoes was working on, maybe
Indeed
that's
he had.
his
And
suicide
that is
thing.
what has led me to believe that there's a very good reason why the bust had to be made. Your Honor, do you happen to remember what the clock you mentioned was used for?
Why, it was the murder weapon. Twice, in fact.
Indeed it was. There's no way Maya and I could ever forget the thinker.
Correct, Your Honor. On that note, the defense would like to withdraw the claim that Captain Harvey committed suicide.
I knew you'd come back to your senses eventually.
Mr. Wright, are you pleading guilty?
Of course not, Your Honor. Far from it. I find it somehow morbidly fitting that once again a statue would turn out to be the means to a murder. But the murder it was intended for never took place.
Excuse me?
Eh?
What? Fool! Have you completely lost your mind? Captain Janus Harvey is dead, and that's an undeniable fact.
True, but Captain Harvey was never the murderer's target. Because the murderer was also the victim. Captain Harvey brought the explosive not to kill himself, but to kill someone else. This explains why no suicide note was recovered from the scene.
Objection! This is madness! Pure insanity!
Oh, let's finish it after this, then I'll
I've heard many
turn it
wild
off.
theories from you in the past years, and many times I have been left pondering whether you are a genius or a complete basket case. Right now, you're leaning very heavily towards the latter.
Nick, stop being so cryptic before the judge calls the men in white coats!
Okay. Now that I've got the court's attention, I would like to reveal who Captain Harvey was really planning to kill.
This theory is... I don't even...
During this trial, we've learned that the bomb's lethality was based on pressure effect. It would only be lethally effective if used inside the iron chamber. Since Dr. Siegfried and Sergeant Tennant walked away, and Harvey couldn't have anticipated Private November's surprise visit, the answer is fairly obvious. There was only one scheduled meeting left in the iron chamber. Harvey's meeting with Lieutenant Irene Victoria. She was Captain Harvey's target from the very beginning.
Objection! You've gone too far, Mr. Phoenix Wright. You've absolutely nothing to back up such utterly audacious claims!
Oh, but I do.
Impossible!
For example, it was Captain Harvey himself who had placed Lieutenant Victoria last on the meeting schedule.
That is but a tiny, meaningless detail. Tell me, if you can, what kind of motive would the victim even have to murder her?
Harvey's rationale was simple. Lieutenant Victoria threatened his promotion. For it was her work, not his, that was deserving of a rise in the
True.
ranks. Had she spoken up, Harvey's entire career might have crashed and burned. That is why Captain Harvey had to get rid of her.
But it still makes no sense. Why was hiding the bomb inside a bus necessary?
I imagined it was supposed to go something like this. Captain Harvey's goal was to murder Lieutenant Victoria, and he planned on using an explosive as a murder weapon to give himself a perfect alibi.
But wouldn't using an explosive do exactly the opposite?
Perhaps, yes. But let us consider the circumstances. Harvey's office had been cleared and his belongings checked for anything hazardous on the day before the murder. He also knew he would have 2 witnesses confirming they saw nothing suspicious in the office on the day of the murder. The statue was created in order to hide the bomb in plain sight inside the iron chamber.
What a foolish suggestion! Why go through the trouble of masking the bomb when he could have just hidden it near his office and fetched it during lunch?
The reason is simple. It was due to the keycard logs. His alibi was based on the fact he never left the iron chamber, and therefore couldn't be suspected of retrieving a stashed explosive. That's why he had to bring the explosive with him when he first entered the office, to strengthen his alibi. In the eyes of the court, That would make the only plausible option that it was Lieutenant Victoria who brought the bomb to the crime scene. She had the expertise to create one after all. Harvey would only have to time the explosive to go off a few minutes into the meeting with her. Then upon her arrival, he could have simply left the room for a moment and pulled the kill switch to seal her in with the bomb, which was still hidden inside the statue. In court, he could have claimed that it had been Victoria who was trying to murder him, and that he locked her in the office as an act of self-defense, and the bomb she made went off on her. Case closed.
What a fascinating story, Mr. Phoenix Wright. But it's only that! Delirious fiction! Allow me to give you a taste of reality. Cannot escape the fact that Captain Janus Harvey is the one who died. Way before the scheduled meeting with Lieutenant Irene Victoria, I might add. Furthermore, you cannot prove that there was an explosive inside the bust. And even if there had been one, what do you suppose happened to make this brilliantly planned murder backfire? Explain these things to the court, if you can.
Indeed. The defense's theory seems quite far-fetched. Mr. Wright, I hope you have some very decisive evidence to back up these claims and redeem your sanity in the eyes of the court.
Come on, Nick! Show them you're not insane!
As you wish, Maya. Miss Von Karma, has the police reconstruction team managed to pinpoint where the bomb was when it went off? We could simply compare that location to where the witnesses saw the bust.
I'm so sorry to say, but that's out of the question. The core of a pressure blast can be really hard to find, but in the iron chamber, it becomes nearly impossible for several reasons. The metal walls or floor will not have blast marks left on them. The plaster dust will spread everywhere regardless of the exact spot of the explosion. And the furniture is all welded down, so they cannot be used to determine it either.
That just means you can't rule this possibility out either.
That is of no concern to me, since it is you who must first decisively prove that the bomb was inside the bust, Mr. Phoenix Wright.
Ugh. Nick, if you can prove that the bomb was inside the bust, then we've already won. There's no way Mike could have gotten his hands on that.
That's the
You know what? I'll
problem,
just
Maya.
play on and
Since
make
the
this
bust was
not a part
vaporized,
video,
there's
it's a
no
full
direct
video.
evidence to help us. I'd like to discuss the other two aspects of my theory first.
Your Honor, the defense is stalling for time again and wants to direct the court's attention elsewhere, because this is where his theory comes short.
It's actually getting pretty good.
Face it, fool! I have you in a stranglehold that I will not let go until you either speak or choke.
The prosecution does have a very valid point. This is a very critical thing to prove, if we are to believe the defense's theory. Mr. Wright, I am going to ask you once, and once only. Can you prove that the bomb was inside the statue? Yes or no? Those are your choices.
Nick, that's not a valid answer.
Your Honor, this is a simple question. I suggest you do not give the defense too much time to think about it.
Right. Mr. Wright, I'm going to count to 3. If you do not answer by then, I will have to assume you cannot prove your claim. 1, 2...
Something's gonna happen.
Miss Von Karma!
I thought I was gonna pass out there.
Yeah, figure
My
something was happening.
apologies. This is the call from the reconstruction team that I've been waiting for. If you would excuse
She has
me
a
a
freaking
moment,
cell phone on her.
Franziska Von Karma
You're supposed to have your phone
report your
off.
findings. What? Get a copy of it here, on the double then!
Miss Von Karma, what is it?
Your Honor, the prosecution would like to request a recess. The reconstruction team has apparently recovered some critical evidence from the crime scene.
Share?
This is quite an interesting development. What have they found?
I will submit the evidence to the court once it has been delivered to me, Your Honor. I assure you, it seems quite decisive.
Out of the frying pan into what, I wonder? Franziska doesn't seem too delighted. But this is not the time to start celebrating.
Very well. The court will now take a 10-minute recess for the prosecution's evidence to be delivered to the courthouse.
I'm going down the slide.
Court is in recess.
And the good
What
times.
the devil happened in there,
Elementary
Mr.
school's
Wright?
going
That phone call
to
had to
recess.
come.
I'm sorry, Mr. November. Usually the murder weapon is a more solid piece of evidence. As in, not in a million tiny pieces scattered around the crime scene.
An explosion would do that, yeah. Damn it. So to conclude, we're in trouble.
Admittedly so. But the new piece of evidence seems to have broken the prosecution's stranglehold.
I wonder what it might be.
Never thought that bust of Harvey would be so damn important to this case. I mean, I saw it too. Or was your theory just one big bluff?
Well, the other option is that you did it.
I'm sorry, Mr. Wright. I'm just a bit on the edge at the moment.
If we're gonna keep going this route, I'd like your opinion. Do you think it would be possible that Harvey's bomb went off by accident?
It's possible, but not very likely. Although he was quite drunk when I saw him, remember?
That does sound like a really bad combination.
I am
Yeah,
curious, though.
that would actually be kind of
Are
funny.
you serious with your claim that Harvey attempted to kill Lieutenant Victoria?
I have my reasons to believe so. Evidence, too.
Well, what kind of evidence? May I see?
You seem really eager all of a sudden, Mr. November.
Mike, if you know something, I'd really appreciate the help.
I've heard that Captain Harvey and Lieutenant Victoria have a history, since they both started their work at the regiment on the same day. It's just a rumor, though.
We might have to look into it.
The recess is over. Would everyone please return to the
That
courtroom
was a
immediately?
fast 10 minutes.
Mr. Wright, please get me out of this mess.
Court is now back in session. Miss Von Karma, was the evidence delivered in time?
Yes. Yes, it was, Your Honor.
Then please, present this new evidence to the court.
The police reconstruction team has finished its work on recovering some of the documents which were shredded by the explosive. Begrudgingly, the prosecution submits to the court an alleged suicide note, written and signed in Captain Janice Harvey's handwriting.
What?
Well.
What?
Suicide note?
Why are you acting so surprised, Mr. Wright? The suicide theory was presented by you to begin with.
I mean,
It also means that you've been talking nonsense for a good part of the trial.
Stalling time.
Either way, can this really be true? Was it really just a suicide all along?
Miss Von Karma, are you certain that this document is genuine?
The handwriting is still going through additional analysis, so we can be certain whether or not it was written by the victim.
I see. How likely is that?
I have been told the possibility is high.
Well then, what does this mean for the trial? Miss Von Karma, your thoughts?
Again, we do not know if the suicide note is genuine yet, but if it is, it would be very strong evidence for the suicide theory. Captain Janice Harvey was a serious man and would hardly write such a note for no reason. I have done everything a prosecutor can do to win. But if the facts of this case stand as they are, it is by default impossible for me to triumph, unless I twist the facts and claim that white is black. That would be perversion, not perfection. But as long as there is doubt left, I will keep fighting.
It seems like the victim did go through all that trouble just to take his own life. It makes one wonder what may have driven him to commit such an act.
Your Honor, I would like to present a copy of the note to the court. It may shed some light to his motives.
Very well. I shall read it aloud.
To the gentlemen at Allied Nations. I know what you are up to. You're trying to lure me in with your empty promises of absolution, so you can make me your scapegoat for what happened 4 years ago. I am not that foolish. You say you only wish to know the truth? Ha! I will take the truth to my grave, so the unanswered questions will haunt you until the day you die, and I regret nothing. I never have. Major Janice Harvey.
What a dark, twisted message to leave behind.
I think I feel a little sick.
The prosecution is
You
not
should
sure
not
what
play the
it was
games I've
referring to
seen.
with 4 years ago, but it is of no relevance to the court if the letter itself is genuine.
But didn't you say the victim was knocked out the whole time?
I presented a possibility. The victim was knocked out, yes, but it is also possible that he steered up and decided to end himself when he could, before he had to face Lieutenant Irene Victoria.
So, the only thing this court can do now is to wait for the handwriting analysis results?
Yes, they should be done by the end of the day.
We won after all?
Perhaps. We may have reached a conclusion, but I
Don't
can't help but
paint
feel
the
that
candle
if the
blue
trial
yet.
ends here, the ultimate truth behind Captain Harvey's fate will become unattainable. The details of what transpired in the Iron Chamber are still blurry, and there are too many questions left unanswered. Most importantly, why? Why did this happen? How's it all connected?
But at least Mike seems to be off the hook now. What else can we do?
Since there are no more issues for this court to address for the time being, the proceedings shall end for today. This court will reconvene tomorrow to decide on a dismissal of the case. Court is What in the blazes?
Your Honor, I think someone's at the door.
Come on, pal. Let me in. This is important.
Gumshoe.
Bailiff, tell whoever it is that we're just about to end the proceedings for the day.
Yes, Your Honor. Sir, the court is about to...
Finally. Sorry, pal. Emergency. Don't worry, pals. I'll save you.
Detective Dick Gumshoe, how do you justify barging in the courtroom like a baboon at a banana bazaar?
And more importantly, why did you not return to your seat on time? Did you take a bathroom break? I told you there were no bathroom breaks.
I kinda lost track while working on something. But it paid off. I, Detective Dick Gumshoe, present to the court a suicide note left behind by the victim. Well, gee, I thought there'd be a bit more commotion about it.
We are already aware of the note, Detective. Your little circus act has contributed nothing.
Dick Gumshoe, you have not only broken the sanctity of this court's arrangements, but also disgraced all of criminal affairs. Look forward to your salary evaluation, Scruffy.
What?
Bitch.
But I...
Wait, isn't the original note still going through handwriting analysis?
You're absolutely right, Maya. But then, what is the note Detective Gumshoe has?
I found it in a small locked box I took from the crime scene. I just managed to get it open, too. How can you all know about it already?
Oh, you black man, little bitch.
Now that's more like it.
Or lying.
Your unforgivable tampering with the crime scene will be looked into later. For now, submit that note at once.
Sir, yes, sir.
Your Honor, please read it.
Why, this note is nothing like the first one. In fact, it's almost the polar opposite.
Nick, was the case just infected by your insanity?
I'm not insane. But this is crazy, I have to admit.
Hurry up and read it, Your Honor.
Very well.
My confession. I cannot run from my past any longer, and I do not have the courage to confront it. It is finally time I came clean. I have had to live with the guilt of my crime every day for 4 years. It was my irresponsibility and it alone that caused the tragedy, and I see no other way out than to take my life. Earthly courts cannot give me absolution. My court will be a higher one. I cannot ask for forgiveness, but the least I can do is apologize to my victims. It won't bring them back, but I hope all these souls will finally find peace. Janice Harvey.
The judge's voice rang through the courtroom as he began to read out a list of nearly 24 last names, all of which seemed alien to the court, until he reached the last one.
November.
At that point, I glanced over at Mike. He was looking down to the floor, away from everyone's eyes, and he seemed to be trembling a little, as if he were trying to hold back tears.
Well, at least he was nice in the end, I guess.
Unexpected turn. Mr. Wright, Miss Von Karma, I want you to investigate how these 2 notes came to be and whether they are genuine, so we can reach a right verdict tomorrow. That is all for today. Court is adjourned.
The echo of the judge's gavel seemed to linger in the courtroom as people slowly started to walk out. But Mike didn't move. He kept staring down to the tips of his army boots, with his fists clenched. I stood still, turning to look at the bailiff who was standing a few meters away from Mike. He shook his head with a small sigh, watching on as the crowd made their way out. Among the people, I saw Dr. Siegfried, Staff Sergeant Tennant, and Lieutenant Victoria, each of them with a troubled face. Before I even fully realized it, only me, Maya, the bailiff, and Mike were still standing in the courtroom.
We should get going, sir.
Without another word, he cuffed Mike and escorted him away. Let's go, Maya.
Yeah, let's.
It's the last day of the investigation, and we're all back to square one. But we've managed to uncover something that people have been quiet about all this time. The incident 4 years ago. It's mentioned in 2 completely different suicide notes, the origins of which are still a mystery. Now it's time to find out what it means and how it connects to everything.
Still got a little bit left, or a lot left. Is that the useless bit? Yep, useless bit. Don't give a crap. So, anyway, that was Interactions Phoenix, right? Episode 4. I never thought I'd actually go for a full hour on this one. Almost an hour. Still, that was actually really good. Makes you really think. So now we know it was a suicide, so very interesting. But anyway, hope you guys liked the reaction, and have a nice day.